So this is going to be a guide on how to do the Covenant Butterfly. So there's a fair bit of RNG that you're going to have to account for. So I'm going to be going over all the different scenarios you're going to need to know and how to combat them. So the first bit of RNG you're going to run into is which type of flood you're going to be using for this trick. For my first example, I'll be showing you how to do this with the Elite Flood. So the first step in this is luring a flood into this corner and being a melee attack. Then after the melee attack, jump on this ledge and look at the flood. When the flood turns to look at you, that's when you jump. And the goal of this is to have the flood do a jumping attack at the apex of your jump, so it has maximum jump height to butterfly him out the window. Now when the flood is slightly above you, that's when you do your butterfly inputs and push him out of the SOP barrier. Then you're going to want to hug against the wall to lean against the SOP barrier, or else you'll fall timer. Alright, that was the Elite Flood. Now we'll show off how to do it with the Brute Flood. So the Brute Flood's pretty similar to the Elite Flood, so you're going to be doing the same thing, banging into a melee into the corner, but the only difference is going to be you're going to be waiting a little bit longer at the top to do your jump. Now onto the Marine Flood. So with the Marine Flood, at least on Legendary, you're going to want to shoot the gun out of his hand first. Then the only difference with the Marine Flood from the Brute and the Elite Flood is you basically want to jump as soon as your feet touch the platform. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit longer, but most of the time you're going to be jumping as soon as your feet touch. So the timing is pretty tight with the Marine Flood. And that time I didn't hug the barrier, so I hit the fall timer. So if you fail the butterfly, you can lure the flood back to the center, then try to lure him back into the corner and try the process over again. And also, the flood can either do a lunging attack or a quick attack, and this will also affect the timing of the butterfly. So in pretty much every scenario, there's going to be a mix of flood you can choose from. So just basically choose the flood you like using most, then using that flood for the butterfly. If there's all of them, I usually choose the Elite Flood because on Legendary, everything else is easier to kill. But the Marine Flood is the fastest. Here's another example of failing the butterfly, then maneuvering the flood back around and trying again and hitting it successfully. So after you complete the butterfly, you got to hit the load zone. There's a couple of different routes you can take to do this. So the first way is the safer option that will be more consistent, is doing slides down the structure and doing a hammer jump off of it to land on the cliff. You can also bunk your head doing this, so just make sure you jump late so you don't bunk your head. And you have to keep walking up the mountain until you hit this load zone. The second option is doing this redirect slide. So this is a little tricky. It requires to go down this corner crouched and uncrouch once you see the opening in the structure. This will send you on a redirect in between the two trees, and you got to use your hammer to redirect yourself into it if you're not properly lined up. So here's another example of it. Uncrouch. And this sends you right to the load zone. It is faster, but it is a little tricky. You also want to make sure to have a diagonal right input while doing this. So the last part of this trick is the pathing after you hit the load. There's a few ways you can do this. So the first way is jumping down here, doing a spike grenade jump up to this little ledge, and then you can use a frag grenade and combine it with a slide jump. The timing's a bit tight, and you can use a bunch of hammer swings to go down the mountain. I usually try to leave at least 4 swings left to have for double scarabs and citadel. Then on Legendary, I'm going to jump to delay my checkpoint to get it right before I get in the Hornet, so I have the optimal timing for double scarabs. So the second way you can do this is the same, but if you don't have a frag, you use a plasma for the boost. So the timing when you throw it is just a little bit different, so you can just keep in mind when I throw the nade here and about right after when I jump.
First, we stop the troop. Then we deal with the flood.
Alright, so this the pathings you gotta use on legendary. On easy, you're probably gonna be wanting to do this sideways, and I'll be linking how Yeb lines that up in the description, so you can take a look at that if you want to go for that sideways. Then other than that, that is the end of this tutorial. So good luck with the Strick.